Hello and welcome to a Saturday special El Clasico post-game edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani, joined today by Jose Perez and Siddharth Ramsundar to discuss Real Madrid going to the Montjuic, beating Barcelona 2-1, when at halftime it looked like worst-case scenario DEFCON 1. It was going to be a terrible Saturday, yet Jude Bellingham had other freaking plans. Jude motherfucking Bellingham transcended, scored an unbelievable goal, scored the winner, and there's a lot to discuss. A lot to discuss from start to finish, ebbs and flows, momentum shifts, bad to good. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, it could have been. I was bracing for the worst. Like I said, if it's a bit messy on the back to everyone, like I'm just in the middle of moving, I had a tiring day. Then I went to this game thinking, okay, I don't think I'm going to relax from this. Then the first half happens. Crap. Okay, this is going to be a lot worse than expected. And then, like, I don't know, I just keep watching this team being, and just thinking, like, throughout the season, they can keep getting away with it. And then Jude Bellingham's like, no, we can keep getting away with it.
It's a cheat code, man. Sid, he's a cheat code.
Yeah, I mean, before the first goal, I was just getting ready to say, like, these too many long shots, the technique is so perfect, but it's too bad we're not, like, getting him good chances like City. And then Bellingham's like, who cares about possession and structure? He just scores from 35 yards. And I'm just like, oh, I guess if you can do that, it doesn't matter who your coach is. And I'm still in shock just because, like, it's such a fairy tale. And I'm really glad, Kiyan, because I wouldn't be here if we lost 3 or 4-0, as I was telling you guys before we started. And I'm glad I'm here. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Jude.
We should clarify before going any further. For those who are watching this podcast on YouTube, Sid is not wearing a Barca jersey. He's wearing that weird Bayern jersey that has like the kind of blue and red stripes. But it's not like of all days to wear that jersey, you chose the Clasico post game to wear that jersey.
It's a Ribéry jersey, guys. It's a Ribéry jersey from 2013-14. It's pretty iconic. Don't take it personal.
All right, with that out of the way, why don't we start with the starting lineup? Jose, what were you looking at from both sides, Barca and Real Madrid, before the lineups were even announced? What were you curious about? What was going to catch your eye? What were you looking for? And did anything surprise you?
So we had been there had been rumors already for the rest of the week that Camavinga was going to be the one benched and that Mendy was going to start. So that was not particularly surprising. I'm still very much on the boat of Camavinga should be the starting left back for now. Is it ideal? Perhaps not. Is it the best defensive left back we have at the moment? Yes, as was shown again today. But anyway, so Mendy, like the Mendy thing, I saw it coming. In general, I think that was kind of the 11 I was expecting. Despite the issues that Kroos has out of possession, and there were a bunch of them today too, I still think that because of his possession impact, it still made kind of sense to start him. I mean, I don't like having both Kroos and Modric starting at the same time against an opponent of this caliber, but Kroos in particular, I think it's still valuable in these contexts. So all in all, it was pretty much the 11 I was expecting, unless Carlo decided to do something weird like the whole 5 midfielder rumors, which I was just gonna lose. I was gonna lose it if the team did 5 midfielders again, because that went horribly against Atletico. But so all in all, like I think it's the most it was kind of the most expected lineup for me from the side of Real Madrid. Then with Xavi, I definitely got a bit more surprises. Honestly, this is one of the game plans that has impressed me the most from Xavi in Clasicos. There were a couple of interesting debates. Is Oriol Romeu gonna play? Is it gonna be Araujo or Cancelo? And then, of course, Xavi's answer is I want them both because both of them give me things that I want a lot from my team. So he decided to go with the 3 center back plan, which ultimately it's looked like the correct decision. So in a way, one could see it as Oriol Romeu was taken out for a center back. Oriol being like a generally good player, but he struggled a bit. It's almost like Frenkie de Jong struggles a bit when Oriol is not there. Oriol struggles a bit when Frenkie is not there. So in a way, it kind of makes sense to just take him out and then just have a completely different double pivot, which in this case was kind of Gavi and Gundogan. I mean, one of the stories of Gavi this season is that he's moving into a deeper role after being more of like a forward-thinking midfielder. But yeah, so I found it interesting. And of course, like maybe Xavi adding another defender would have seemed rather conservative in other contexts, but I think in this particular case, with all the injury absences, I think it just made a lot of sense to maybe sacrifice a bit more people up front for another defender. And I think it also helped a lot to get past Real Madrid's pressing attempts. We'll go a bit more on that later. But yeah, that was my impression. Honestly, when I saw that 11, I really got like Xavi is cooking something and I don't like this kind of vibe. And the first half kind of confirmed that.
Yeah, I largely agree. It was a great lineup. I think the only good thing about that lineup was that if they dominated us, it didn't have the forwards who make it 3-4-0. Like, and I was just like so grateful in that first half. I'm like, any other 4-3-3 conventional, we're down 3-0 because they would have just outnumbered us in the box. But otherwise, I thought it was great. And I thought that what I was really, as far as the lineup, I was expecting Mendy at left back as well, seeing the reports. But I was shocked at how Balde was able to pin Valverde so easily. I think I wasn't expecting. I knew Fede would be battling with Balde, but it was Fede like literally playing right wing back and Carvajal pretty much man marking Felix, and that it never really felt something I was comfortable with. It felt like we were getting dragged around, and Fede never attacked. I can't believe we won with Fede like actually doing nothing offensively. I'm pretty shocked. Like he was good. He was still one of our best players if you see like expected threat and stuff. But in terms of what we're used to seeing from him, we didn't get any of that. And I think credit to Xavi for really forcing us to mark Balde. And I also thought benching Romeo was the right decision, as we saw in the second half when Romeo came on. That Gavi Gundogan double pivot, so good physically. But yeah,
I think it frustrates me a little bit when it's the opposing team who does the pinning and not us. Like we have all the talent to be the ones who are doing the pinning. Fede and Rodrygo should be playing in a way that keeps Balde honest. I do think from a Barcelona perspective, it made sense to go with Cancelo and Araujo because we haven't seen a Clasico in the last few years. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if we have, it's very rare that Araujo does not play right back. In the Vinicius era, Araujo just goes to right back because that's the way Xavi wants to control him. And Araujo is certainly very capable, and I thought Vinicius had one of his worst performances that I can remember, certainly in a big game. And, of course, Cancelo was in the mix now. Cancelo was not in the mix in years past. So we had to wonder, like, what is Xavi going to do? Well, of course, his solution was, and I don't know if you want to call it a 3 at the back, a 5 at the back, a 4-3-3. It was kind of like it fluctuated into kind of different kinds of things, but whatever the case, Cancelo in an advanced role on the right wing, and Araujo mostly sticking on the right back position, but getting also a lot of help in transition defense from Gavi, Gavi a lot. I mean, who else? Like, sometimes it was Christensen coming over from the central position. Their transition defense I thought was quite good. I guess like this felt very much like the classic Champions League second leg, like those ties where Real Madrid just saved all of their aggressiveness for the last quarter of the hour in the second half. Like 30 minutes to go in the game, it's like, all right, subs, aggressiveness, let's keep possession, let's start pressing, and let's take the game to them. And before that, it was a completely a performance that you just got outplayed. And I guess this is my frustration because I'm trying to put myself in the moment because now like I'm on this emotional high after the game. I almost forgot what I was feeling at halftime. It was so frustrating because you see Real Madrid have all the talent to be able to take the game to Barcelona. We saw that in the second half. We know every single Clasico how it's going to go down. Regardless if they have Pedri or Frankie injured or if they have their whole team injured, they have to play with Barca D. from like the under 9 system. They're going to go in and approach Clasico every single time the same way. They're going to try to press you. They're going to try to gain momentum, make you uncomfortable in your build-up. And that's what happened today. We were lost in the build-up phase. Jude was very limited in his touches. He had to resort to coming back to help escape pressure. He would turn around, look up. There were 4 Barca shirts in front of him. He would pass it backwards. As Sid put it, Fede was pinned. He was not driving the ball forward. That changed a little bit in the second half. I thought he was much better. And you see all these things, and yet it's not surprising to us that this is the way Barca approached it. But every single time, it just feels like we're lost. We're like so caught off guard for some reason. And I don't know, like Ancelotti said after the game, second half we were more aggressive, we had more energy. Sometimes you want to play a certain way and you can't. That's the way he explained the first half. Jose, do you feel like these conservative approaches that we take in these big games, is it the right approach, or should the team stylistically be trying something different in these games?
So this is something I've wrestled with a lot over the last couple of years of Ancelotti's tenure. On one hand, I've kind of given up trying to ask for apples from the orange tree. I know that Ancelotti is we're not going to press and dominate out of possession like a modern team as long as Carlo Ancelotti is the coach. And at this point, it's not even like a criticism. It's just, it is what it is. With his style and with the way he builds teams. So it's just not something that this team is going to be capable of doing as long as he is the coach. There are, of course, other advantages about Ancelotti being the coach. That's not one of them. So, and of course, then you go into that. Then how are you going to do? And this approach really hits its ceiling against these kinds of top teams where. And it's happened again and again with Ancelotti, where it's just very hard. Like, as long as the out of possession structure is not that well defined and that well drilled, it's going to be very hard for Real Madrid to control any of these games. And it's what happened today. And it's like in every Clasico of Xavi versus Ancelotti, unfortunately, aside from the one that was it our 4-0? I don't remember. Aside from that one big victory, the Clasicos between Xavi and Ancelotti have been mostly played according to what Xavi wants.
Yes.
And it's more Real Madrid reacting to what Barcelona is doing rather than the opposite. And that is a problem. I mean, I think the whole Fede situation that you and Sid pointed out is a great example of it. I mean, Fede has been doing a lot of great stuff this season in terms of ball progression, moving the ball into dangerous areas. But today, the team basically allowed itself to be pinned back from the usual kind of 4-4-2 shape into essentially a back five and we made a back five with Fede, and that kind of took it. And like Sid said, that kind of took him out of the game offensively. So, and all of this is because as long as the out of possession structure continues to be this messy, it's gonna be quite hard to dominate again. It's gonna be hard to be proactive against these levels of opponents. Even and here's the thing: there's not that many opponents against this will happen. I mean, you even go against the Napoli level opponent. I mean, right now it's been a bit messier for them, but even against that level of talent, Ancelotti's approach can still get you can still be more proactive there. But there's really a handful of teams that have enough talent and pressing, like your Arsenals, Manchester City, Barcelona, Bayern, where it's like a handful of teams where it's going to be really difficult to be proactive against them.
Yeah, 100%. It's just those handful of teams, and that's really all the concern is. The 2 times we played really well against Xavi's Barca, one, Dani Alves was playing it right back, so I don't really count that game. It was one of Barcelona's worst moments, if you guys remember. And then the second one was last year, the October Clasico. I think that game is almost hard to use as an example because Kroos and Modric played. Benzema was fit, like one of his best games of the season. Like we're never going to see that team again. So that means so far in Clasicos, it's been pretty tough against Xavi. And yeah, today was a lot more of the same. I think where I'm conflicted about the first half is we know Barcelona come out into these games looking to murder us. Like they literally want blood. They come out with knives, they bite at us, they claw at us, like they win every 50-50. And it was almost like jiu-jitsu at moments. Like I remember when Kroos lost the ball to Gavi, I actually wasn't upset early in the first half when they almost scored. I think Fermin might have hit the post when Gavi won the ball from Kroos. But in that moment, I was thinking, fine, we're not building up well, but there were moments where I saw them just waiting to attract Barca's markers everywhere. They were just coming, Kroos would come, stand off, and Barca would put a lot of markers around him. So I was hoping that we would play well in the second half. It's just, again, that's a Barcelona thing. I think like we saw against Man City, they're not the type of team that plays too aggressively in one half and then loses their depth and loses their way in the second half. So in a sense, it worked in that, when they brought on Oriol Romeu and Lewandowski, I felt like there were two sides to it. On one hand, Xavi should have stuck with his better players in the second half. But on the other hand, they were exhausted. They were playing with more intensity than us. I'm not sure if it's something they could have done the whole game. Again, though, where I'm disappointed is that we had no plan and build up. I think it was good that we tried wearing them down. I just felt like we should have released Fede. Also, why is Tchouaméni going to press as right mid instead of Fede, and then Tchouaméni and Rudiger kind of shift over to cover the right side? That's where I was confused.
Yeah. And going over the Ancelotti Xavi kind of head-to-head thing for a second here, I think it's I'm doing this manually really quick. There's probably a website that just tells me off top of, you can just with a click of a button. But so Carlo wins the first one 3-2, loses the second one 4-0, wins the third one 3-1, then loses. So that's a 2-2, and then we lose at home. So 2-3, 4-2. I think like this actually somehow evens it. I'm not entirely sure. It's either this one evens it, which kind of surprises me a little bit, or he's behind one. Anyways, I guess the point is like you mentioned some of those issues, Sid. I felt like the structure was one thing that we didn't know how to deal with their press. It was also that defensively we didn't. I felt lost watching it. Like I didn't feel like there was a coherent defensive structure or a coherent plan behind the ball. Our press was kind of half-assed as it usually is in these situations, and we didn't have enough bodies in position to actually press when we wanted to. You would see one of Vinicius and Rodrygo kind of trying to press, but they weren't surrounded by white shirts. And when you have like one or two players kind of pressing, your first line of defense is easily permeable. And Vinicius and Rodrygo weren't getting behind the ball once that initial line was broken. So we were already shorthanded on defense in that sense. Now, mind you, this part's interesting to me. I thought Barcelona were far better in the first half. That's not even up for debate. I think everyone agrees with that. I thought Real Madrid approached this game terribly. Commentators at halftime were saying this is the best performance of the season. And yet, they didn't create like a massive amount of opportunities. And we were still in the game just behind one goal. And that part kind of shocked me a little bit. I think we have to maybe give a little tip of the hat to Dani Carvajal, who was fighting like crazy. I think maybe he could have reacted better to the goal that was conceded. But he doesn't react, and Alaba reacts far too late and not urgent enough for my liking, and Gundogan scores. But it was kind of a miracle that we were only down one goal and actually not conceding that many chances. So we were right there, despite Barcelona being far better than us. And I just felt like we were a couple tweaks away. But those tweaks were kind of dependent on the fact that like Vinicius was having a really bad game. Rodrygo was completely out of the game as well. And so like even if you wanted to tweak it, you need more from those guys. And I don't know, like with our like maybe 2 transition attacks we had in the first half, Vinicius didn't have any outlets and his decision making was poor on top of that. And I don't know, like I don't really know what's going on with Vinicius and Rodrygo. This goes back to the whole system thing. But like, where are you on that, Jose? Like, are we maximizing our attacking output? Are we relying too much on Jude HeroBall? What does this season look like if we don't have Jude HeroBall in so many games?
Yeah, at some point, like with the system, because there's a lot of, because of course there's a lot, like the dominant story that I see a lot is the whole, okay, the system change has affected Vinicius and Rodrygo. I don't buy that, honestly, that much. To me, it's still more of kind of an individual issue rather than a system one. Like with Vinicius, for example, we've already seen, okay, the first few games of the season, he's playing more central, but one of the tweaks we've seen of the team, like in the team over the last month or so, or a bit more than that, is that Vinicius is playing increasingly more in his usual kind of left-sided role.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's nominally he starts as a striker, but he's playing in, like, he just keeps playing on the left wing. So at this point, and he keeps receiving in a lot of the same zones he would if he played on the left wing. So at this point, it's more of an individual issue with him than the system one. And I would say with Rodrygo, actually, like on paper, him playing in the center should help him more. But it's just, I mean, the Rodrygo problem is a bit more long-standing. It's just, he's had issues with scoring for a while throughout all of 2023, and it's really gotten in, and it's finally, and I think even throughout last season, it didn't get into his confidence. Like, it didn't affect his confidence that much. And I think this season, like, it's really finally, like, taken its mental toll. And now the player is really struggling a lot more to execute at the level, to perform at the level he did last year. It's just, it finally took the toll on his confidence. But to me, the issues with Vinicius and Rodrygo are less system and are more individual, in my opinion.
I think the main thing is, Matt pointed this out, Benzema was way better at getting the angles when he pressed. It felt like Vinny and Rodrygo, even if we were outnumbered, they also were just running around. Like Rodrygo especially, I have no idea what he was doing for long stretches defensively, where it was like he's not playing a position. I think there's a point where maybe you need to define what he does a little more, because he has his freedom to float into midfield and take touches when he wants. He's not like pinning the center backs the same way Joselu is. And when he's pressing, he's kind of all over the place. I would have loved to see actually Rodrygo track Balde. I know he's not a right winger, but in this sort of game when he offers very little on the ball or off it, just make him run up and down and he can at least offer you some pace. And I would have had Fede more central. I was very disappointed at both the pressing angles and offense of Rodrygo. With Vinny, I think his offense is mostly fine in that he's still making, like, other than trying to draw fouls. And yes, I get it. Araujo uses his hands a lot. I think Vinny needs to watch some movies and get a little better at selling it if he wants to go that route. It was there are times when it looks like he's just looking to the referee too quickly when he needs to like really sell it. And I think he'll be fine offensively. Defensively, both of those two just don't know when to press, how to press. Bellingham, if you watched him, he was actually pressing really well, no matter where we were.
Yeah, he was
on his man. Right. Like, it didn't matter that we had no structure. Bellingham was on his man. And that's where I think it's a bit of, with Rodrygo, I think a change of coach is going to be very key to actually see him improve. I'm not sure if things get better automatically on their own. Like, once Joselu came on, I thought he still pinned the center backs a lot better, even if he wasn't like finishing chances. Immediately, I felt our threat was a little different. Maybe it was in conjunction with Barcelona also losing control. But yeah, I guess like I'm more disappointed in Rodrygo. I feel like Joselu is going to get more minutes if this continues.
That's an that part of it we haven't really talked about yet in the starting lineup. That was a question that many had, Joselu versus Rodrygo. It's not a question that, like, I don't think it was actually ever realistic for Joselu to start this game. Like, I understand that the fan base had their valid points when they said we prefer Joselu over Rodrygo, but I knew that in reality, within the realms of what is realistic, Ancelotti was not going to start Joselu in this game because he was going to play in transition. And so he needs Rodrygo to run in transition. And Joselu is more of a target. Joselu, by the way, big shout to Joselu, who dragged some defenders away and created some space for Jude to score the game winner. We'll get to it. But I think, like, this whole system thing is kind of a cop-out for Vinny and Rodrygo not playing well. And if you look at it today, I agree with Jose. Vinny is getting the ball where he gets it last season. He's getting it in the left wing. He's getting it where he likes to get it. It's where his comfort zone is. And I think he's just making some poor decisions on the ball. And I think you look at it today. 42 touches, 4 dribble attempts, 0 successful, lost the ball 17 times. That instance, for example, when he's having that little kind of fun, I guess, exchange with Xavi, I don't think it was that serious or that much tension involved in that. It was right after he gives the ball away and claims that Gavi fouled him. As much as I hate to take Gavi's side on anything, but I think it was a clean challenge on that play, and it nearly led to a Barca goal when he lost it, and all he had to do was Cruz was there for a simple pass. He forced a dribble pass. Gavi lost it. That's the play that Joao Felix nutmegs Rudiger, and Carvajal has to sprint back to stop Joao Felix scoring point blank. So there was that play, and then also just to double down and just like argue with Xavi about it. Like that, stuff like that needs to be just, cliche to say, but kind of take a page out of Jude's book. When Jude scored that one of the goals of the season, he didn't even celebrate. He just like went back and was like, okay, go. We need to get the winner. We need just kind of like sometimes to just get on with it and focus on the game. To be fair to Vinicius, I don't think any player is going through what he's gone through in the last few years, including today, where Phil Kittro had tweeted that the Barca ultras were chanting en masse to the stadium, chanting Vinicius die. So I can't imagine what it's like to be so alone on so many of these, these situations where he is actually a victim. It's not like one of those kind of fairy tale, oh, he's a victim, he's not a victim. No, like he's getting racially abused every single game. He's getting death threats. He's getting unspeakable things being happened to him by fans and ultras all around Spain, every single. So I'm not saying it's easy for him to always be in the right place mentally in such a big game. But just in a vacuum, analyzing his performance, we need better from him. I thought Araujo won that duel, although he lost the game. What other things from the first half caught you guys' eye? I know the way we're speaking, it's like as if we lost that game. Well, we're gonna get to the good stuff soon.
Yeah, that was our impression for the first half, and I think you had mentioned at some point it's like why they couldn't capitalize more on it. It's pretty much what Sid said like at the beginning. It's like the advantage of this Barcelona setup is that it definitely improved their ability to build up in certain areas, but it came a bit at the expense of punch up front. There was just not enough bodies up front to capitalize on the things that were generating when beating the press. So what always happens, and also like generally the tactical story a bit for both Barcelona and Real Madrid this season has been a bit like, okay, Barcelona are intense, they press, they are really good at disrupting the opponent's passing sequence, while actually Real Madrid is one of the worst teams in the league at disrupting the opponent's passing sequences. But if you look at the number of like box entries and final third entries, they're almost the same, which was a finding that I was looking at on Twitter this week, which blew my mind, because you always work under the assumption that, okay, the more you press, the more you disrupt the opponent's passing sequence, the fewer entries into the box you're going to allow. And here you have two teams doing completely diametrically opposed approaches in how good they are at applying pressure, and they end up getting the same result somehow. They still, even though Real Madrid doesn't press in a coherent way, they still end up preventing the box entries, which I find quite interesting. So part of it is, yes, Real Madrid has this issue where opponents can play out against them, but they still don't find a way to get into the box. That has been the trend this season. So that's one. And two, what Sid mentioned, Barcelona just did not have enough bodies up front to really capitalize on what they were doing. So, and the other thing I'd like to add, I think there were like, this was a massive this is what, okay, so this time I'm going to say nice things about Gavi. So sorry to every Madridista who's listening, because I like the first half performance. I found it incredible. The story of Gavi this season is that he's moving, like after playing as more of an advanced 8 kind of role, he's moving into deeper roles, doing more passing. Like, I mean, his big to-do, like in previous seasons, was on the passing side. He's looking more comfortable as kind of a deep in kind of a deep playmaker kind of role. And then you add to that, of course, his defensive work rate. I mean, what Barca were doing here on a systems level, it could not be sustained without Gavi's defensive work rate. So he's kind of the one who pulled the whole thing together here. He was in charge of tracking Bellingham in a lot of things. And well, again, it kind of sucks for him because, of course, then in the second half, like the couple instances where he lets Bellingham go is when he just goes and wreaks havoc. So, I think it was a really good performance from Gavi overall. But yeah, it's like, but with Bellingham in his current transcending state, you leave him alone a couple times, and the couple times he will punish. So.
I thought we saw both sides of Joao Felix and why I don't really love him as a player. Like, got on the end of a lot of chances, pressed pretty well too. Like, he pressed like a dog. Xavi got him running. And, but, you know, he didn't have that speed. Carvajal was able to recover and clear a couple really close chances he had. And I thought that was interesting, other than even the numerical thing. Like, I wonder if there was a better forward there, maybe they would have capitalized too. Not that Felix was bad. He's just like there was a chance I thought we were screwed and Carvajal recovered out of nowhere to stop him. And I would say another thing, I think Alaba was getting a lot of hate on the goal. I would say that's just more unlucky goal. It felt like Gundogan's magic like really worked on that goal. Like Alaba full stretch, like length, trying to clear the ball, barely got any energy on it. And even then it kind of landed for Gundogan in such a perfect way. So we didn't start well, but I did feel the goal was like not something that was lucky at all. It was unlucky. And if that goal didn't happen, I suspect we would have seen a much more defensive game with Barcelona's setup and Real's. But because of that goal, it changed the dynamic fully, where we had to press a little more. And they completely abused us when we tried pressing it first, but they didn't have the energy to do it all game. Yeah, and I think that's my only thought. And I guess, like, last thing on the first half, did you guys feel, what did you think of us trying to drain them of energy in the first half? Did you see that sometimes, like where Kepa, I know it's not fun to watch Kepa holding the ball, but like, and just staring and seeing who's open. But I felt Cruz and Kepa, especially, the plan was to drag out Barca's markers as much as possible.
Yeah, the problem is that Barca are too good of a pressing team, and we just didn't look like we had the proper outlets. So even if that was the plan, I don't think it was successful at by any stretch of the imagination. I do think on the goal, and you spoke about Alaba, I think it just seemed like such a preventable goal. And to me, it just felt like we were all asleep. And, you know, I'd love to kind of blame it on the kickoff time. I don't like when that has that kind of, what's it called? Is it overcast? When it's like this, you know how like it looks on TV with the shadow taking half the stadium. It's the setting on FIFA I always try to avoid because it looks terrible and it's hard to see everything. And I hate watching it. And I was like trying to, like, a lot of people were like, man, this kickoff time sucks, and Real Madrid, you know, don't do well in these kickoff times. Like, hey man, Barca have the same kickoff time and they have way more energy than us. We can't blame it on this. So as much as I'd love to blame it on that, it wasn't that. They were just hungrier than us. And I just felt like we lacked energy. And if it wasn't like Alaba reacting late to that, I feel like also if you look back on Barca's build up in that sequence, they just brought it up so easily. It was a combination of the late reaction from Alaba, not clearing it well enough, and also just the fact that our defensive structure allowed Barcelona to get the ball up the field so easily. You mentioned something, Sid, I was going to touch on. I think it was, what were you talking about before that goal?
Oh, I was just saying that was a very, like like if that goal didn't happen, I think it would have been a much more defensive game. And by XG, it was in the end. But because one team or the other was up for so long, we saw a lot of back and forth. I think without that goal, look at Barcelona's setup. I think we would have been more conservative. Maybe we get passed around and they score anyways. But as soon as they scored, I figured it would be a more open game. I guess like one thought on in addition that's more interesting. Would Carlo have brought Mendy off if he didn't get injured? And how does the game go? Like, for me, the funniest part of this game is that 5 minutes into the second half, we bring on Camavinga by force and it changes the game. But it was a little concerning to me that he didn't make it proactively at halftime. And I just wonder what would have happened if Mendy didn't get injured, unfortunately.
Can we just go back really quick before we get to that? Just to Gavi, before that was what I was going to say. We did a Twitter audio space at halftime, and Matt had said, you know, hate to say it, but Gavi is amazing. He's playing really well. And I was like, you know what? Say what you want about him. Like, what he was playing with, that adrenaline, that fight, we would have taken that just to take that and put it into any of our players in that first half. We just lacked exactly what Gavi had. You got to give it to him on that. But the Mendy and Camavinga thing, I mean, is it really interesting? I think it's very clear. It was clear before this game even started. Camavinga should not be on the bench for any big game. Rest him in between. Do whatever you want to do in whatever you classify as a small game on the schedule. If it's a big game, he just brings too much to the table to not be on the field. He changed the game for me in the second half. And we can get into all the reasons why. And your question said, what would have happened if Mendy didn't get injured? That sub should have happened at the latest at halftime, ideally to start the game. And I kind of just wish Camavinga would come out and say, hey guys, I really enjoy playing left back. So we could all feel less guilty about this whole thing because he's so good there. From a two-way balance overall perspective, he is the best left back we have, even though he's not a natural left back. And the funny thing is, I actually didn't think Mendy was that bad today. I don't really have any noteworthy moments in my notebook. Maybe you guys do, where Cancelo exposed Mendy. I thought Mendy actually did well to close the space down, but he just is so limited for everything else. And you come in, one of Camavinga's first touches was like a roulette under pressure. He's shoulder dropping past people. He's escaping pressure. He's passing the ball well. He popped up at the top of Barcelona's box. I don't know how or why he ended up there, but he did that twice and provided an outlet for Carvajal that did not exist. So he's playing all over the field as well on top of that. He just, to me, changed the game, and we can talk about all the things that changed the game, but he was one of them. I thought, come on, man. If we learned against Atletico that Tchouaméni has to be on the field in a big game, I hope we learned it now that Camavinga can't be on the bench for situations like this. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, with Camavinga, that's the thing. That's why I still advocate Camavinga even at left back, because in the end, especially against this for example, a good example was first leg against Manchester City this year, where he was essential to get through the press. We're really at this point where okay, I normally say that Kroos continues to be our most impactful midfielder in possession, and I think a lot of the time when the team gets to the opposition half and has to organize things in the opposition half, he's still him deciding where the ball goes is still one of the most important, it's still one of the most impactful things a midfielder can do for this team. But especially in build-up, I think Camavinga is increasingly becoming the most essential player to have in build-up phase, because it's just adds another level to the team, in its ability to, especially against opponents of this caliber, it just gives the team a completely different level in its ability to beat the pressure, and that's pretty much what we saw today.
Yeah, his ball carrying, I mean, he's not Marcelo, but out of all the fullbacks we've played there, he's the closest by far in the way he can evade pressure. And just being able to evade pressure, once you win the ball back, was so much more important in this game. This game reminded me a lot of his performance in the World Cup final as well, the way he just came off the bench and kind of changed it. So I hope we see more Camavinga at left back. And if we don't want him to play there, we have to sign Alphonso Davies. There are not that many left backs on the market that are actually better than Camavinga. I think that's the funny thing. I just tweeted because he's that ability to evade pressure. You don't usually get it from someone who trained to be a left back. You get it from former midfielders or wingers like Davies. So, yeah, I mean, I just didn't think we'd be like, I thought Fran would help, but like we're back here.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. And by the way, like that, you remind me that like what he did in the World Cup final was also because the left back got injured.
At least they had Theo, the one if we had Theo, at least everything would have been good now. But no Theo. Damn it! Why didn't we keep Theo?
Well, Theo, but Theo was not that good for us, to be fair to us. And it wasn't until he got to Milan where he really got to the level he is now. But, we talked about Camavinga and how we changed the game. Modric was another one. And as Ancelotti put it, quote, Luka changed the dynamic because with him, we had more ball control and Barca took a step back in pressing. Afterwards, Jude was very effective. He scored the first goal and was astute in the second. This is funny to me that I think like Modric and Camavinga, they changed the game. And Joselu also had an impact too. And with regards to the players that they brought off, apart from Rodrygo, who had a really poor game, and we didn't mention that we could have actually scored earlier if Rodrygo potentially squared it to Vinicius at the start of the second half, but he chose to shoot from a tight angle and it was over the bar. But Camavinga replaced Mendy and Modric replaced Kroos. It's funny because I will sometimes look at our defensive structure and look at Kroos and be like, well, that's problematic for our defense. But actually, I thought today he wasn't really the problem in that sense. He had two really important tackles in the box in the first half. Had the most tackles of anyone on the field, I think, by the end of it, which was just 4. He had them all in the first half. He played 2 really nice balls over the top to Vinny in the first half as well. I'm not saying he was great. Sid brought up the part where he lost it to Gavi and Barcelona nearly scored. They hit the post. I thought for some reason that was called a foul. Maybe I'm mistaken.
No, it wasn't. I thought it should be a foul, but no, it wasn't.
Okay. Anyways, I guess in the cases of like with Modric and Camavinga, they changed the game. I don't think like necessarily Kroos and Mendy were terrible, the people they replaced, but Modric and Camavinga in particular played really well. And Modric, I thought, was just really mobile and calmed the game down. And, you coupled that with the fact that you have those incremental improvements plus Fede. I thought that was a big notable difference for me in the second half. He just started to drive the ball forward more and made Barcelona a little bit more uncomfortable on that side. All of that, but really the biggest difference was Jude Bellingham. That goal he scored, to me, was the biggest game changer that took all of these incremental improvements to another level because it sucked the air out of the stadium. It gave oxygen to our team. We started to play with more momentum, more confidence. Barcelona regressed. And I'm curious to get your take on this, guys. If you were to ask, I'm asking you guys, I'm not asking Xavi, who said after the game that Barca, this is a really funny quote. Did you guys see this? Hold on.
Oh, I couldn't believe it.
Let me bring it up. All right. Sid has seen it. Jose has not yet. Managing Madrid tweeted it. Hold on. The quote is...
It's like the people who were talking when we beat Liverpool and Man City a couple years ago, like saying it was an alternative reality, we don't win. It was like one of those tweets.
It was kind of like moral victory vibes that they also did from last Super Cup, that whatever one they lost before, and they threw a party. The quote is, "We deserved the victory. In the end, they made us suffer, but I think that with total sincerity, if anyone won the game, it was Barca." End quote. Anyway, so I'm not asking Xavi who deserved to win. I'm asking you guys because my perception is that Barcelona were better in the first half. Real Madrid were better in the second half. And this is, I'm clutching at straws here. so forgive me for being naive for this statement I'm about to make. I think Real Madrid's dominance in the last 30 minutes of the game was better than Barcelona's dominance in the first half, which ultimately gave us the advantage of quote-unquote deserved winners. As we know, my favorite quote is from Diego Simeone. He says, "Whoever won the game deserves to win the game." That's it. That's the rule. I love that rule the most of anyone. But I was kind of intrigued when I looked at the stats. Some stuff surprised me in that, I always go and check Mark Stats bot after the game to see what some of the analytics he's posted. And the field tilt was in our favor this game, and so was the expected threat. And so I guess I think we did so much in that last 30 minutes that I think just it kind of just turned everything in our favor in terms of the attacking momentum, the dominance, and the psychology between both teams went into two different directions. Barca just regressed. They started playing poorly. And by the end of it, their defense was in shambles. They were actually conceding quite a number of transition attacks. Kind of reminded me of the old days at the Camp Nou where Barca have just conceded a goal, and all of a sudden Bale and Cristiano are getting all these open spaces to run into and behind the fullbacks. What was your perception of the overall balance?
So what I find interesting is that this kind of Barcelona collapse in the second half is something that I've seen a lot from Xavi's Barca against top teams in the last couple of years, in the last 2 years. It just rarely happened against us. They were usually more stable, but this is for example, a lot of their European collapses in the last 2 years have been a lot like this, where they have this very strong first half, and then they start losing control, and then the game becomes very come and go, and then all defensive structure goes out the window. So yeah, I guess the surprise there is that normally that didn't happen to them against us, but here I don't know if it's the amount, just the amount of injuries, the amount of key players they were missing. It was just harder for them to keep control. Barcelona obviously got worse with the changes, but you look at the bench and it's what else? With so many key players injured, okay, what else can they bring up the bench? It's Lewandowski was probably not doing great, but who else did it make sense to bring out at that moment? So yeah, I think that's kind of what surprised me. In Clasicos, they don't lose control that much towards the end. This is something that's been happening a lot in top games for Xavi's Barca, but not against us, and this time it did happen. And then the situation got really chaotic, and when the situation gets really chaotic, this Barcelona struggles a lot, and Real Madrid kind of thrives in that chaos. So,
yeah, it's interesting how they had nobody to bring off the bench. That was one, and secondly, for a change, we didn't start Kroos and Modric together, so there was a nice physical edge that we brought throughout the game that was more sustained. Whereas the Super Cup last year, we started Kroos and Modric, and they played us off the pitch, and it was 3-0 before we could do anything. And we still didn't do anything. I think that's where the young players were really nice. Tchouaméni, Fede, there's a general physical level we have no matter what when we don't start both of them. I thought that was very exciting. I think the Barca in big games thing, I keep watching that first half, and even during the half, I felt it they don't pace themselves at all. They just seem to think, especially in these games, they just want to run until they're dead. And by the end, I think I noticed Gavi's body language. He seemed kind of worn out at points. He didn't have the same aggressiveness at the start. There was one play when he just looked tired, a little dizzy. And I know how I feel when I get there. And it's just you've used up the tank. I think, and I bring that up a lot because I attribute that absorption of pressure and ability to press at the end, that chaos, to our fitness. I think part of our strategy is get the best players, give them pintas. Maybe they don't play well for 70 minutes, but the last 20 minutes, we're always going to be alive. We're always going to be locked in. It's a feature of Real Madrid 2016-17, 21-22. And so far this season, we've seen a lot of the same. Right. So then I also attribute that Man City second leg. I've long felt one of the reasons we won is because by the very end, when we finally went back to press them in waves, we had absorbed their best punch in many ways. We had taken their punch and they didn't have the energy to get back. I think most teams, you can either pace yourself throughout the game and have a late run, or you can dominate and you need the cognitive ability to close out. Now, if Barca had Pedri, maybe they completely shut us down. If they had De Jong, maybe they have enough. But they didn't. They had Oriol Romeu, who, I hate to admit it, but Romeu is looking like pretty bad for Barcelona right now. As soon as he came on, even at 1-1, I was watching him and he was doing nothing. Like, he was kind of floating aimlessly between the lines. Defensively, you go watch the Bellingham goal and he just kind of leaves Bellingham for the defender and he can't even keep up with him on the run. So, I mean, sorry, Oriol Romeu, but thank you for coming on and not being as good as Sergio Busquets or not being all you were hyped up to be.
He's had a decent season, I think, all things considered. But our depth is pretty solid. And like you said, you look at that Bellingham second goal. Bellingham just runs into the box, makes that diagonal cut in, and gets into the box. And Romeu, who's marking him, just, even though he's a fresh sub for them, just stops. He's like, okay, this is the extent of my tracking. Bellingham, it's all yours, buddy. And meanwhile, I think Kozilo does a great job of making a run, the opposite run that Bellingham is making to the near post. He's making to the far post. And I think he dragged Araujo. I think it was Araujo. It was one of the defenders he dragged with him. Maybe it was Christensen. And Bellingham's run is very clever because Inigo has no idea Bellingham's even behind him at that stage. And the sub, Modric. Great assist. Brilliant miscontrol this out of Bellingham.
I was also happy to see Lewandowski come on because I love Dowski, but we're chasing a game. I'm happy to defend against you up front. Just stick Rodrygo on an island with him. I'm not worried about Lewandowski in transition. Like, sure, he can flick it on, but he's not going to carry the ball himself. And I just thought, Ferran, he has his ups and downs, but I think they should have kept him on. But again, what do you do when your forward runs himself into the ground? Because that's what you asked him to do. I think Xavi's Barca just tend to run a little too much. I think, Jose, you've talked about this. I think many people have noticed that their style is very predicated on being able to run. They will have moments like the first half where they dominate cognitively, but there's very rarely a full game where they actually control it. Even against smaller La Liga teams, we noticed that, they had a few draws in the weeks leading up to the game. It's not the easiest for them to control. That's really all I have to add. It's, I wonder, I guess, if they're fully healthy, it would be better, but it's possible their injury problems also stem from this run mentality where they just get their guys, have them go all out, run them into the ground like a battery and keep going.
Yeah, I still find Xavi's Barca to be a bit rigid, positionally. And when you have these big distances in between the players, well, that forces them to cover more ground, naturally. So, that's the thing. They're in defense, it still feels like there's significant distance between the players. They have to run a lot. The team sometimes looks flatter in possession precisely because the distances between players are so large. I mean, that's been kind of the whole thing. The two Joaos came in is precisely because both of them are kind of more free spirits and run around without that much of a position. It was giving that extra. And that's why I think Barcelona in some ways has improved in possession, because it has that extra free-spiritedness of the two Joaos. But in general, I still find it a rather positional team, which has some advantages in defense. When you have a more rigid structure and players are in their positions, sometimes it can be easier a lot of the time it can be easier to defend because everyone is already in the right positions. But other times it doesn't help defense because you have to cover more ground if the distances are large. So pros and cons. And then with Oriol Romeu, the thing is that Oriol is the kind of player who, especially against this, first of all, I think he's a player who's really good to have in the day-to-day of La Liga, but against top opposition, he was always going to struggle. And I think he's a good player to one, help you control games against maybe lower level league opposition. But if you are with a game, if you're playing a game out of control against a top opponent, there's no way he will help you control it. And again, Xavi did not looking at the bench. He probably didn't have much more of a choice So it's like, okay, this is the one shot to stabilize it, but yeah, it was not going to be enough. And with Lewandowski, I agree with Sid in that. Well, the thing is that when you have guys like Joao Felix and Ferran, they are more involved in possession, so they can get so Barcelona can still, like, for example, those two are very good at, say, getting behind the backs of the midfielders, receiving passes and getting something to happen. But then once in the box, they're not the killers that Barcelona needs there. While with Lewandowski right now, it's kind of the opposite, where, like, if you could get him a ball in the right position in the box, he can probably get you something. But in his current state, Lewandowski is not going to help you get into the box. So it's so they really didn't have a solution. Which again, like, this is which is interesting when you look at Real Madrid. That, okay, we lost a guy who could do that in Benzema, and then with Bellingham, we kind of got a guy who, in some ways, I mean, I think. Now that Sid and Mehdi are doing, like, the Real Deal pod, and they were posting graphs that where you could see actually the similarities between, like, the positioning of Bellingham and Benzema, and that they operate in similar zones, and you could see that that's exactly what guys like Bellingham or Benzema last season allowed you to do. They can still help your possessions, they can help you get into the box, and then once in the box, they can still decide games. And those kinds of players are the game changers.
I can tell, Jose, you're trying to be a little bit more, like, careful with your words, not to be blasphemous towards Benzema. But the reality is, like, this version of Bellingham is an upgrade over last season's Benzema.
Yes.
And, you know, you look at how deep he was playing, especially in the first half today, but then to be able to pop up with 2 goals and be able to, this is the thing, like, we're relying on him to also play defense, and I don't know how many people are realizing that. Like, I brought it up the other day that he leads La Liga in blocks, and I don't think that's, like, a stat that is, you know, obviously not as flashy as the fact that he leads La Liga in goals, but he's doing a lot. And so the question is not, like, in his abilities, it's like, at what point is he just kind of, like, burn out? Because you could even tell, like, he scores an insane goal to equalize, and he's like, whew, let's go back and let's run it back and try to win it now, guys. Like, he looks like...
He didn't even celebrate. I love it.
No, he didn't celebrate. And, like, the last game, he looked pretty gassed, too. And so all that is the concern, the burden, and all that stuff. But, yeah, the thing is, like, the Romeo thing and their injuries and stuff. Just to point out a couple things, is that I had a Barca friend telling me, like, you guys are lucky Lewandowski's not playing, you know, kind of like turning it into an excuse. And I told him, like, look, to be quite honest, I'm not sure if I'd rather face Lewandowski than, you know, one of his, like, other alternatives, like Ferran, for example. Has Lewandowski hurt us in the Clasico before? Like, I mean, he's just not, at this stage of his career, mobile enough to press us, to do the build-up the build-up stuff, and to run in transition. And Militao in past Clasicos has marked him out of the game completely. And so, like, obviously he's a great player. And this could come to haunt me, like, in the next Clasico where Lewandowski scores or something. But I'm just not sure if I'd rather face him anyway. And then the whole Pedri thing, like, I gotta say, like, every Barca's fans, like, you know, if Pedri was on the field, like, if I'm a Barca fan, I'm just worried, like, do I ever get Pedri on the field at this stage? I'm actually worried about that. The guy is not proving to be durable, and it's not a knock on him. Like, he went through that insane run playing, like, every game for, like, 2 years when he was younger, and I don't know if it's catching up to him or now or what, but I'm worried about that if I'm a Barca fan. Also, like, the fact that nobody from Barcelona is pointing out the fact that Real Madrid don't have Courtois or Militao at all. It's like just because they were out for the season, like, we just don't acknowledge it anymore. Like, oh yeah, but you got lost for the season. It's different than losing Pedri because Pedri's not out for the season. Like, okay, like, disregard the fact that Kepa has actually been fine today, but there was definitely at least one moment where one of his passes to Carvajal was like, oh, my heart was just in my
Carvalho saved us, man. He saved us there. He got to the ball.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I can't believe we won an El Clasico with Kepa, baby. Like, now we have that on the Real Madrid resume. Like, this dude was not supposed to be winning any big game, and now, like, he's at Real Madrid, and it's not the end of the world, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still like I've tried to learn not to think too much of this goal wouldn't happen with Thibaut at goal. It's like I try not to think about it too much. But yeah, like the thing with Barcelona is that to me, for example, part of the whole reason to go for Gundogan is so that if Pedri gets it, because last season it was really like it was a huge problem if Pedri was injured because there was literally no one of his profile who could replace him. Kind of the whole point of getting Gundogan is like, okay, now we have the squad depth to deal with that. So it's sure they would control games. They would control the game better if Pedri is there, but you have Gavi growing into his deeper role. You have Gundogan still as kind of your Pedri replacement. What does it take then for this team to actually work in midfield
and for Mins here too, and that's another profile that was not expected.
Yeah, so and I do acknowledge that, for example, just having losing the whole unit with Pedri and Frenkie takes a lot of what Barca can do in build-up. Honestly, the fact that they go so easily, it's been the trend with Real Madrid that there's no, the pressing is easy to go through, but the fact that even without those two, they can still go easily through Real Madrid's press is still concerning, but all in all, the injuries happens, like you said, Real Madrid is missing its two most important defensive players, and they still kind of find a way to survive and to concede not as much as you would expect they would without their two leading defensive figures.
I will say Rudiger has honestly been phenomenal. Inconsistent Militao may not be as good as consistent Rudiger that we're seeing right now. I would just put that out there. I love Rudiger's performance, very commanding on the ball, very good defensively. Very happy to see what he pulled off today.
Yeah, I need to dive a bit more into Rudiger's on-ball numbers, because kind of the thing that disappointed me the most about Rudiger last season was the on-ball stuff, which was he was really good at it at Chelsea. Then last season it completely disappeared, and I think a big part of that was him shifting from the back three in Chelsea to kind of a back four at Real Madrid. And let's hope that he's just starting to get used to it now a bit more.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think that's what it is. For me, the biggest indictment on our coaching is the fact that he looked so good at Chelsea and then looked confused at Real, because that was a ridiculous ball player at Chelsea. And I get he knew exactly where to pass it. I get that Tuchel probably went over all the scenarios on the training ground, made it pressing a button on a controller, made it easy. But even then, there were points when he looked so confused last season on the ball. I was concerned that, what are we doing? That it shouldn't be this hard. But yeah, I'm super happy to see what he's doing. Carvajal was solid too. And yeah, I thought, again, just to mention again, Alaba was solid. I know he didn't get that tackle off, but no missed crosses from him, which I thought was good.
Curious to know what you guys make of this Ancelotti quote after the game, kind of explaining what they had planned defensively and what went wrong in the first half. He says, quote, "The approach was with Vinicius on the inside and Bellingham pressing the fullback. But they changed, and to prevent Cruz going for Gavi and leaving space between the lines, I asked Jude to cover that gap. We had some problems pressing Inigo Martinez because we were a bit afraid to go, and we didn't always jump. And with the ball, we were very slow. We lost a lot of time with back passes." End quote. The last sentence is pretty clear. He's saying in possession we were too slow. Too many back passes. I guess he's saying with the press is that they planned for Vinny and Jude to press the wing back, but then they had to drop because Gavi was leaving space between the lines.
I think so. The one thing, and this is something that when we were having the discussion the discussion earlier, I was thinking about is like that the pressing issues that the team had in the first half were very much felt like the team was prepared for something else, and then Xavi with this approach, with like Cancelo and Balde as wingbacks, like it really caught the team off guard. Like it, yeah. That is something that, at least to me, when I watched the team, like that was also the feeling I got, that they were prepared for something else, and then once they saw that, it's like, okay, what are we gonna do now? And they look confused about it. And I think the quote from Ancelotti definitely confirms it, that they had something very specific in mind, but the plan B maybe, yeah, they just didn't expect this would go that way, and that completely collapsed the organization of the team when it in the pressing, like and it forced situations like, yeah, maybe they weren't expecting that third center back the way it was, like the way they did, because yeah, like sometimes, well, Araujo always usually plays right back in these Clasicos, but like there have been situations in these Clasicos, you often have situations where, okay, Araujo is the right back, but they still play like kind of a back four with like the two center backs building up and Araujo playing actually right back. Rather, here it was really three center backs building up, and that really messed like how the team was organized in the pressing. Like I do agree that it seemed like the original approach was going to be a bit more like pressing just two center backs, and then once you had to press a third one, it really like completely broke the rules of what the team was planning to do.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm glad Bellingham won that Gavi matchup in the end. As phenomenal as Gavi was, that's what you get your 100 million Bellinghams for, baby.
Well, let me ask you guys this then. Right now, with Jude scoring as many goals as he has this season, so many of them late game winners, some of them game winners after underwhelming performances as a collective, the fact that we're doing this on these Bellingham goals without much offensive help outside that, does that worry you because of perhaps a lack of sustainability? Although we're sitting here like idiots every game. Is this sustainable? Is it sustainable? And it's like every game we ask the question. I think it is now. Does that worry you, or does it give you some kind of weird optimism that we're doing this without Vini and Rodrygo clicking into gear yet, and assuming that does happen eventually, it takes the team to another level?
For me, it's the second one, in the sense that I feel like Bellingham's current level, regardless of whether if it's sustainable for a whole season, great, and if it's not, it's at the very least, the way I see it, it's buying us time, basically, for the team, for the rest, especially in the offense, for the rest of the team to come together, and especially for Vini and Rodrygo to recover their best level. So that's also how for me, I'm actually a bit optimistic about it, because if we're managing to get through these games, even with Vini and Rodrygo doing poorly, it'll be really nice. It's going to be really nice if in the second half of the season they can get something going. So at least for me, I do see Jude's current level as something that positive, that buys us time for the team to get better. Because sometimes what happens is that, okay, the players are not doing well, then you keep losing games, your confidence keeps dropping, and then you keep spiraling down in terms of performance. With this at least, okay, the performances haven't been necessarily great, but at least it keeps the confidence level up, and it's okay. Then you can keep trying another day. So to me, it's buying the team time to get better.
Yeah, I'd say I'm largely there. I think there's reasons for optimism and reasons for concern. I think concern-wise, I am still afraid if we have to play at the Etihad Stadium again later this season.
Sure.
I'm very afraid. And I'm somewhat afraid of the Emirates as well at this point. I'm not sure. I just feel they're closer to Barcelona in maturity. Same for Munich, not places I want to play. And, if we don't win the Champions League, then, if this is buying us time, we better win the league. I think that's where I'm at. And the reason I'm confident that we can win something is because Rodrygo has competition. I believe Arda Güler and Brahim can give Rodrygo a run for his money if this continues. If Rodrygo is going to keep spiraling like this, I'm very concerned. But I think we have enough pieces between Joselu, Brahim, Arda that will compete with him. And I'm just not concerned about Vini. I don't know how else to put it. I'm just not concerned about him offensively. He's so good. So I largely agree. It's just, we are playing the margins. And if we go away to the Etihad, we can't afford that type of first half. That's all I really have to say.
Low key, we're getting into Goulet territory because I think he technically probably could have been ready for this game, but there's no way the first game back would be El Clasico. But I think in November we're going to finally see him. And
I believe in Carlo's comments. He said Goulet and Bellingham in the same sentence, and that's been seared into my head. I don't want to read too much into small sample. I've been as excited for Goulet almost as Jude. So there is a world where it's like a young version of 21-22 where team gets better. We pull off some magic later in the season. I guess my expectation is Champions League. That's why I don't want to get too ahead of myself. And I've learned to expect disappointment in La Liga. Winning a Clasico and not winning the league is something I've seen multiple times before, unfortunately. Yeah. Last October, same time we were celebrating. Look what happened. Yeah. So I'm just a little calm about La Liga, and I'm not fully believing in Champions League. But yeah, he is buying his time. I just think I hope we get Vini. I hope Vini starts playing a little better soon. He's had a good season, but more decisiveness on the wing. I think with time it'll come. Really, I'm just really nervous that there are worlds where we lose this game. If Barcelona are a little more healthy, we don't play well, we're having a different conversation. And there is a world where Jude plays a great season and it goes to waste. I hate to say it, but
I'd like to share that optimism because I think Vinicius and Rodrygo are way better than they're showing right now. So if they click into gear, that definitely lessens the load on Jude offensively. I hope Jude continues to score, but maybe our margin of victories are just a little bit better than scraping by with the last minute goals. Do we have any notes on the referee? Do we want to go there? Do we care?
We were unlucky to start the game. There were some 50-50s that could have went the other way. And yes. Araujo was a hard one. I don't want to be too harsh on Araujo. You could have maybe reviewed that. But, some people made a point where Camavinga to just tap it past him and try to run past him. It wasn't he got shoved aggressively. They were both going in the same path. But no comments other than that, just because there'll be more to talk about, I'm sure, as cases get prosecuted.
I thought there was a lot being let go in the first half, but also frustratingly, a couple of clean challenges were called fouls. One, Vinny wins the ball off of Gavi in the box, and it's a good place to win the ball, and it was clean, and he got called for a foul because Gavi just threw himself. Another one, Chouameni had a really nice challenge, maybe on Gundogan, and he was called for a foul, and you see Xavi running around asking for a yellow card, even though the replay showed the ball was cleanly won. There were two. I don't think the Ferran where he holds Vinicius down was a red card, like some people asked for. I think yellow was fine for that. Chouameni pulling down Araujo in the box could have been called, but I also think Araujo taking Camavinga in the box could have been called as well. Ultimately, I don't think it was a huge factor in this game, and Real Madrid, in my opinion, deserved the win. Did we miss anything, guys?
Not that I can. I think we've covered everything. We covered the substitute. We covered, I think, the substitutions of both teams in detail, and just just in general how this impacts the season going forward. So, I mean, I think we've gone through a rather rough patch of games. It feels like the next month is a bit of a breather. Still, it might still have a couple complicated ones, still facing Napoli again, but all in all, this is one of like the first match balls of the season, and I think it's quite nice that we made it through that gate. Let's put it that way.
Losing this game with all their players out would have hurt a lot, like the wins we did.
Yes. And of course, but yeah, it's important not to be overconfident about it. I mean, last season, we won the Clasico. There were really good expectations of that, and then Barca completely shifted the dynamic after that. So yeah, so it'll be important. It'll be important to keep this one up. But this was an important this was an important set point to win.
Yeah, just one more thought that I thought Tchouaméni, when he took that long shot, was like foreshadowing what he's capable of if we get him more long shots in good positions, the ball striking. Like he's hit the post a bunch now for us. And I know he scored his first goal not too long ago, but he's really capable of punishing the defense. And, someone pointed this out on Twitter, but basically our ball striking from midfield between Jude, Tchouaméni, and Cruz is pretty intense. And, we've seen individuals win us game with headers, with brilliant trivelas, but like a 35-yard banger, that was fresh. So I hope we see like more long shot brilliance going forward. Like this is strangely could be one of the greater long shot teams between Fede, Tchouaméni, and Bellingham, and Cruz if he wants to have a go. So that was nice.
Yeah, in general about the conversation about the coaching, I won't spoil. Let's just say today's a happy day, so I won't spoil it with talking about the coaching. I'll leave it at that. Like, because I would like to a degree to be able to play like a more modern pressing football, but again, like I said, there are pros and cons about all this. At the same time, Carlo's flexibility with going back to like a narrower shape, like it has had defensive issues, but maybe other managers wouldn't have been willing to make a system where like Jude had so much prominence in it. So again, so it's a bit of pros and cons, but yeah, I'll leave that conversation for another time.
I agree about that. Almost no other coach. I was thinking like maybe Klopp at Liverpool is the only one who would have given Jude this type of role. Like, I don't know if any other team would have done that. I agree. This was a big win for the so-called relationists, everyone who loves seeing teams without structure, with individuals win. I'm sure there was a large batch of people just cheering Madrid on for winning against Xavi's structure. And yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, but I think we had a small section cut off, so I'll repeat what I said before. I would like for a coaching change next season, no matter what. And I think the first half proved that. But thank you, Carlo, and I hope you end on a high.
Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk about coaching. We have already talked about coaching plenty this season, all season. I did notice that at halftime, Zidane was trending on Twitter. And I didn't click on it, but I can only imagine why everyone was calling for him to come back after that first half performance. A W, as Tony Cruz said before the game, if we win Clasico, it doesn't mean we're going to win the league. And if we lose Clasico, it doesn't mean we're going to lose the league. So 3 important points equal to any other 3 points we'll get this season. But always nice beating Barcelona. I think we'll just put it there. Gentlemen, It was a pleasure.
The only thing I'll finish is by saying is that, well, right now the best Catalan team in the league is Girona. So
this is correct.
That is correct. I guess one thing for you guys, I took a few notes on visuals that we could compile based on this conversation. We're going to look at Rudiger's possession over the last few seasons, maybe compare.
Okay, please.
So I'll tell you the list, and if you have any additions, there's Rudiger's possession, Romeo versus Busquets, Casemiro versus Tchouaméni in possession, Gavi's changes in possession, and I was going to do Vinny's touches, but I feel we could do something else. Maybe wait for Vinny. Any ideas? Any requests?
I think for me, that's already enough.
This is for this game specifically, right?
This next week, the next week, whatever you want to see analyzed. We're going to do Madrid rolling XG maybe.
If we give you any more, will you even have time to do it? It's a lot already.
Yes.
I'm trying to batch it for like 10 days. So it's like a little more than a week. So feel free to ask. I mean, if it doesn't get done in the next 7 days, it'll be done the 7 after for sure.
Sid has AI help to get him through all this stuff.
It's Mehdi. Mehdi makes the visuals, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we can, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't have anything now, but we can ask the listeners to drop comments on this podcast and give their ideas to Sid and Mehdi. Why don't we, I forgot to do that. I was going to do that. Why don't you just explain the new podcast, what the deal is with that? The real deal.
Yeah. Mehdi is like phenomenal at producing visuals, and he has a lot of good opinions about Real Madrid. I can't produce visuals or code, but I love writing. And we realized like we could put out something consistently that covers the week. And like a lot of times when we come on the show with you, there's pressure to cover what's happening this week live in the news. We figured by starting a separate show, we can change it up. You're welcome. Jose, you're welcome whenever you guys want. Any offbeat topic that doesn't fit on the main show, you're welcome. We'll be talking about historical topics, how we became fans, and we're going to just spam visuals because nobody does that for Real Madrid right now consistently. So, we're open to all data visual requests, a lot of analytics. I'm being unfiltered in the way I comment on stats. Like, this is what I honestly believe. No filter, nothing. So, yeah, if you guys are just look out for the new pod once a week. We'll be dropping on YouTube. It'll be releasing on Spotify with the Managing Madrid show. And time to bring more data to Real Madrid because Man United, Barca, they got like 50 people on each club posting these visuals. So it's time that Real Madrid gets like a consistent data visual look at things like, we all have great ideas. Our eye test is really good, but Mehdi's visuals, they just add so much richness, in my opinion, to discussions. And this is the stuff I used to do a few years ago, and I just stopped, had a lot of things going on. But this is how I like analyzing football, seeing where players receive, looking at XG, creating stunning visuals that really allow you to summarize info. So any visual requests, guys, it's open. We can do almost anything: progressive passing, expected goals, shots, receptions, final third entries, half spaces, whatever you want. Right now and every week, we're just kind of looking at what makes sense to put out. So ideas are welcome.
Twitter handle is The Real Deal. Is that correct?
Real Deal Pods.
Real Deal Pod.
Pods, Pods.
Okay, Real Deal Pods on Twitter. Yeah, Alexis said if you're already subscribed to Managing Madrid on Spotify and Apple, you'll get it there in your feed automatically. If you want the video version, that'll be on what's the YouTube channel?
Same thing, Real Deal Pods across all channels.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Guys, we're going to end it here. Congratulations to all the Madridistas for the W. Hope you guys have a great end to your weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy Saturday night. Enjoy Sunday. Jose, thank you. Sid, thank you. And we'll catch you on Monday. Lucas and I will be back for a podcast as well. Thanks, guys. Take it easy. Peace out.
Thanks, Kiyan. Peace.